we all met. So appreciate everyone's participation in the Metro Plan TAC meeting today. So I will call this meeting to order. And let's go to preliminary general business. Item B, the roll call. Rosie, go ahead with the roll call, please.
Chair James.
Present.
Ann Dunno.
Present.
Brendan Foley is not present. Christopher Tressler, also not present. Jess McNeely.
Present.
Michelle McNulty.
Present.
Jeff Bauman.
Good afternoon.
And Ed Stillings, I don't see he is present. We'll move on to Metro Plan staff. We have Miles Milbeck.
Here.
David Wessel.
Good afternoon.
Rosie Ware, that would be me, present. Mandia Gonzalez.
Here.
And I have others in attendance, Myrna Bondoc. And is there anyone else that I missed for roll call? If not, that concludes the roll call. Chair James. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Rosie. Appreciate it. So move on to item C, the public comment. Rosie or Miles, was there any public comment that was emailed or letters received?
No, Chair James, there was no public comment requested before the meeting.
Okay, excellent. And I don't see anybody from the public on in the virtual room. So we'll move on then to item D, approval of the minutes for May 25th, 2022. Before I look for motion to approve those minutes, I want to open the floor to anyone. Does anyone have any comments, any questions, any revisions to the meeting minutes dated May 25th, 2022? All right, hearing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes dated May 25th, 2022.
This is Michelle. I move to approve.
Excellent. Looking for a second.
This is Jeff. I'd second.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. All in favor of approving the Metro Plan TAC meeting minutes dated May 25th, 2022, please say aye.
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 Aye. And all opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, let's move on then to item 2, the consent agenda. Miles, is there anything on the consent agenda that that we need to take a vote on today?
No.
All right, excellent. Then moving on then to general business, starting with item A, the Strive Forward updates. Miles and Dave, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the TAC. Appreciate you all being here today. And I'm excited to present the Stride Forward update. I want to start by recognizing Dave and the planning team for all the work that they have done. We've been bringing this to you for going on a couple of years now, from original concept through to where we're at today. And we are really on time and on budget. And the intention is to bring this to the board to request adoption December 1st. And that's the timetable we set out initially when we started this planning effort. So we do have quite a bit to share today. And essentially, we've got 3 public meetings next week. And what we're going to share with you is what's going to the public. And then, of course, being the group that you are, we can go, much deeper in some areas than we are likely to with the public. But we do want to get your feedback overall on what we're going to share. So with that, I'm going to ask Dave to put the PowerPoint presentation up, and I'll speak to the first couple slides, and then Dave will continue.
Okay, can we confirm that you can see the presentation?
Confirmed.
Excellent.
All right, so the audience for this presentation is the general public. And the agenda that we're going to go through is about Metro Plan, which you all are experts in and know. We'll talk about Stride Forward, so the general public knows what that purpose is. And then changes since the last regional transportation plan, which there have been many. And then look ahead to 2045. And then talk about really making it real. What kind of change would be required to affect change. And then we'll open it up for Q&A with the public and with this group. So about Metro Plan, you all know this well. Our boundary map is there. Our vision is to create the finest transportation system in the country. And a very ambitious vision that we as a TAC and as a board, continue to discuss. The mission has served us well for a while and seems to still resonate, leveraging cooperation to maximize financial and political resources to actually build that system. And our members are all of you. So there's a Dwight Eisenhower quote. I've said it twice today. I'll say it the third time. I think I say it differently every time. But essentially, he's quoted as saying, plans are useless, but planning is invaluable. And, the point being, if we want to make better choices, we want to be prepared, we need to be postured and be ready to pivot and do things differently and know where we're trying to go. So that's why we update our plans as often as we do, which is every 5 years, and Dave's going to talk about that, and why we have the time horizon we do. So Dave, I'm going to turn it to you.
Great. Thank you, Miles. You all know we're doing an RTP. We do it every 5 years. We look at 25 years. And that, we have been influential through our regional transportation plans in the last two transportation tax initiatives in 2000 and 2018. We'll go through some of the terms that we use with the public: BMT, community design, investments, modes, travel and demand management. I believe you're all familiar with that. We've been updating you, the things that we've done, existing conditions, recent changes, future conditions, coordination with other plans, engagement in the community, and what we've heard from the community, including support for climate action, investments in transit and other modes, preferences for lower, moderate density over taller buildings, and mitigating impacts of density with things like parks and access to transit, concerns for safety, gaps in the system, housing prices. And we have those available on those survey results and other input results available on the website. The changes you're all familiar with since 2017, COVID, the climate housing emergencies, hospital relocation, inflation, voter approvals for 419 and 420, and the carbon neutrality plan, which is really underpinning the reason for our upward scenario. I hope you're all familiar with Proposition 419. We'll remind the public of that, and why these road projects and the head and bike projects listed in the lower left of the image are important for access to housing and jobs and redundancy in the system. Similar for Prop 420, the Lone Tree Overpass, in terms of completing the parallel route to Milton and allowing us to balance traffic and provide access. And then we'll spend some time on the carbon neutrality plan. Things, again, you all should be familiar with. 40% of the greenhouse gases come from transportation sector. We're looking to hold VMT, or vehicle miles traveled, to 2019 levels, meaning we all need to drive less. And to do that, we need a mode shift for most trips, 54%, by 2030 to be made by walking, biking, or taking the bus. And for work trips, 34% of those trips to be by those modes. That 34% is fairly ambitious. We're at 14% now. However, if we look at peer communities, Western towns with universities, and look at the best of those, the Davis, Californias, the Boulder, Colorados, and what they're able to achieve. it adds up to about 40% by those modes. So, there are communities like ours reaching that level. So we should be able to do that too. As we do our look ahead, our onward plan is the status quo. We're looking out to 2045, and we're projecting about a 20% increase in population and employment. These are based on state figures. And we're looking at that in two different ways. One is our onward plan. What are our current projects, 419, 420, for instance, our current land use expectations. And when we model that, we see an increase in VMT of about 460,000 miles per day. And since our objective looking forward is to try to contain that VMT and hold it constant, we were looking at the upward concept. So community design, where do we live and work? Transportation investments, walking, biking, and transit. And in this particular concept, funding is unlimited, where there is no constraint. And when we apply these things, and we'll talk about those momentarily, we are able to hold the VMT to 2019 levels at about 2.4 million miles per day. So our objective is to reduce that 460,000 miles per day. And this is how that is done through a variety of strategies. So community design, where we live and work, we've concentrated some of that future growth, and we'll talk about each of these a little bit more detail. But we were able to achieve 85,000 less miles daily through that strategy. By increasing our investments in transportation investments in transit, bicycle and walking facilities and services, we gain another 183,000 miles, less miles daily. And finally, we apply travel demand management, including work from home incentives and disincentives. And that gets us over the top, another 207,000 less miles, down to 475,000 miles daily reduction, which is greater than our target of 460. So let's talk about each of those. For the upward scenario, we shifted 50% of new jobs and residences to the focus areas you see on the map here, downtown and 4th Street. We tested several concepts, which we've shown you before, and different levels, and found that this 50% shift is about the best. And of course, when we concentrate people where they live and work, that's shorter trips, which equal less VMT, and the ability to walk or bike or take transit, which again is less VMT. In our modeling, we did notice a couple of things. One is, this is not terribly effective in terms of the density shifts. And that's because we're not talking about that much, only 20% by 2045. And if you back that off to 2030, it's 10% or less. So balanced against the weight of existing development, it's just really not going to influence travel that much by 2030. What we do see happening, suspect is happening, is as we concentrate development in a couple areas, you may be creating congestion there, and some trips may take another assignment, another route to get there that's actually longer. I think we all do that during congested times here. And so it actually works against VMT somewhat. Similarly, how models work, and I think they're a fair, accurate, or partially accurate reflection of reality. If there's a lot to do in one place, we may choose to go there, and it might be further away than what might otherwise be a shorter trip, just because it's more attractive. There's more to do. There's maybe more choices. And so one of the things that we found in some minor testing is by not shifting all of that 50% of employment growth to these areas actually helps VMT. And that's one of the lessons we'll take into the regional plan process as they look at different scenarios. So the investments in transit, bike, and pedestrian facilities For transit will include more buses, more places, more often, and more amenities on the bus and as you're waiting for the bus. And we'll talk about just how much of an investment that is at the end of the presentation. Similarly for bikes, the components that are influential, having more bike lanes and trails, more connections, completing our systems, enhancing our road crossings. And we'll do that for pedestrian facilities as well. There's sidewalks and trails. And you can see here some images of some improvements, well or familiar with: rapid flashing beacons, a full signalized crossing. And this is the Cedar overpass, where we just take people out of harm's way and hopefully increase the flow and attractiveness of those facilities. So we've talked about community design, transportation investments. Now let's talk about travel demand management, including work from home. But there is a component of work from home that stands apart, and that is a result of COVID. We've seen what you might call structural changes in travel patterns. When we look at the number of jobs available in Coconino County that can actually be worked from home, and look at the amount of vehicle miles of travel that work trips contributed to, so that's 30%, 16% respectively, we're seeing or estimating about a 3% reduction in VNT as a result of that. However, when we look at a travel demand management program where we're actively, someone, and we'll talk about this soon, is working actively with employers and employees about the benefits of working from home, and personally and collectively, we think that can be increased. So a broader look at TDM in terms of these kind of management operations, as opposed to the community design and infrastructure investments we talked about. You see a list here: improving amenities that are available, things like repair stations for bikes, shade structures, share programs for bikes, scooters, cars, and maybe benefits for them in terms of prime parking, transit passes, and promoting all of these through good marketing and information sharing. You can see at the bottom of the list on the right, parking fees. That would be one of these disincentives that we might apply. The assumptions that we are using is that we're doing all of these things well. And so there's a lot that can be done in TDM, a lot that can be achieved there. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Miles to wrap up the presentation. Miles?
Thanks, Dave. And I just have a couple more slides and then we'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman. So the slide says change requires change, because if we want to get to the upward concept, it's going to require some changes in policy, how we do business, and money, the amount we spend and how we spend it. And I want to reiterate here, the Stride Forward Onward plan already has the money needed and the policies required to be successful. So we can continue doing what we are doing, and we know pretty much what the transportation system will look like. So for example, the Lone Tree Railroad overpass will be built. The Mountain Line transit system will continue at current levels. We'll keep doing business as we are, just projecting that forward. However, if the community wants to do more and move towards the upward model or concept, if the community wants to reduce vehicle miles traveled from what they would be otherwise, we need to make changes in the amount of money we spend and our policies for doing business. So in other words, change requires that we spend more on bikes, walking, and transit, and we develop policies that support those programs. And Dave has the slide up right now that talks about some of those policy examples. And I want to be clear, these aren't recommendations of Metro Plan. These are options and tools that Metro Plan is providing to the community if the community wishes to do so. So under community design, expanding the urbanized areas and increasing housing units per acre would be some community design policies. I know this stuff is really basic for this group, and just a reminder, this is, the public outreach meeting, most folks who, don't have anywhere near the knowledge that the people in this room have. So we've kept it to the basics. With transportation investments, really it's a shift of slowing investments in roads for cars, really reducing that emphasis while increasing the focus for bikes, bus, and walking. And then travel demand strategies. Dave mentioned several of these in a couple of his slides. The idea of promoting work from home programs and encouraging less driving and promoting car share. I put a check mark by this one because it's actually one of the things we can do right now. And this next slide talks about how much the upward concept would cost. So the goals through 2030, if we want to double the transit system, the size of the transit system, it would cost $25 million a year, which is up from the $12.5 million per year spent today. If we want to quadruple the bike and pedestrian facilities, that's estimated to be $53 million a year, in addition to Prop 419 funds. And I want to put that one into perspective. Proposition 419 has $30 million for bike and pedestrian improvements over the next 20 years. So what we're saying is, divide that out, right? A couple, 2.5, 3 million per year. If it was just averaged, we're talking 53 million per year. So it's a big number, and want to be clear what our estimates are about the ambitiousness of doing this level of work and making this level of change. And then the travel demand management program, there's a green check mark by it. By comparison, it just seems so simple, $160,000 per year. And in fact, we already have a grant for that, and the Metro Plan Board has approved the position, and it's open right now. So we're going to be hiring somebody to, lead up that program for the benefit of everybody in this room. And then community design incentives, those costs, I just don't have an estimate on yet to share with you. And next slide, please. So we're going to next steps, policy and strategy development, how we, actually move forward if the community wants to on making some of these changes. What are the policies? What are the strategies? And we've got virtual meetings next week, 3 of them. And we'll continue to work on the cost estimates and the accessibility evaluation. And essentially, the draft document is going to go to the board November 3rd, and we'll have a public meeting, a public hearing on November 3rd. And then November 16th, we'll bring it back to you, TAC members, and ask for your support of the plan. And then on December 1st, we'll go back to the executive board and ask them to adopt it. So that is our approach. And I think our last slide says, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Thank you, Miles. Thank you, Dave, for that presentation. Truly appreciate it. Before I open it up for questions and comments from the TAC, I just want to really point out, and I saw that email that you sent recently, Dave, as far as the virtual public meetings. I definitely would encourage all of you on the TAC to participate in at least one of those. I'm already signed up for the October the 3rd at 6, so I look forward to that. So just want to kind of plug that on behalf of Metro Plan. So with that said, let me open up to any questions and comments. Going once. Oh, go ahead, Ann. I see your hands up.
Jason, you can always rely on me for a couple of questions and comments. Okay, great presentation. Thank you, Dave and Jeff, Miles. Couple of questions. I know this is for the, the public forum. Back on that slide where the assumption about VMT for the upward where there's the density, that's assuming that 50% of the future growth of jobs and residences can fit in essentially those two bubbles. And I get it's not probably a hard and fast boundary right in there, but I'm wondering what level of vetting with city planning for land use and capacity there actually is to achieve that with at least the way our current zoning code is working. That's kind of a first sort of technical question. And then related is, earlier it said that people did prefer moderate density from a residential standpoint, not the high density, the terminology, I guess that was the alternative probably. So I'm wondering if moderate density actually fits in those bubbles. Just wanting to understand how this is being presented, because if I didn't know anything about this subject and someone said 50% of our growth was going to fit in those two locations for the next 20 years, I would think they would think there's a disconnect going on based on the growth in our community. Can you help me understand that?
I'll take this one, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that's an excellent question. And we did discuss both this scenario and the other ones. If you recall, one was just totally focused in downtown and another was a corridor approach along 66. And we didn't walk 4th Street, but I've walked around downtown with Sarah Dechter and Jordan Hollinger from the city. And we think there is room. We actually, added in the model, added the density into the affected traffic analysis zones, added the units and looked at the average. And it's like 9 to 12 units per acre. So, we think we can fit those in with like 3-story buildings, fairly dense, not our typical, one every other block, but, fairly consistent throughout the TAZ. We think it can be done.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thanks, Dave, for that. And then I would just add, Anne, to your question, one of the things that we have funding for and are currently putting out in that RSOQ is actually a land availability and suitability study, so that we can actually wrap our heads around what do we have, not just in greenfield, but also in infill potential with our land base. So I think that will give us an actual data point to actually look at, can we fit that growth in those areas? So to kind of back up Dave's the anecdotal walking around. So
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I'm always interested in learning more about this. And I was actually going to ask you to go back to this slide, so that's perfect. Population jobs are expected to increase by 20%. What is have you been tracking per capita VMT between now from the 2019 level to 2030? And then I'm just trying to make sure I have this straight. 2030 is the CMP goal. I don't remember what the CMP says for beyond 2030. And your project here goes to 2045, of course. What happens with both total and per capita VMT numbers? What are you seeing for these two scenarios in those different frames?
No, that's an excellent question, and that reminds me of work yet to do.
Sorry.
No, it's good, because it's a good question. I need to have that in place before our meetings. So, not to insult anybody's intelligence, but if we keep VMT at the same size and grow 20%, we'll see per capita VMT go down. When we were tracking trends working with sustainability on our kind of annual VMT figures. We do see them starting to go up, a slight trend upwards. They had been holding pretty well steady for a few years, 16, 17, 18, and then started to see those expand as some of the growth really started taking place on the periphery, and we started seeing some longer trips. And then out to 2030, at least the assumptions are out to 2045 in the onward plan, and hence the interpolation back to 2030. Again, seeing growth in the farther reaches, quite a bit in Belmont, quite a lot out on West Route 66, the John Wesley Powell corridor. And these are not only longer trips, but trips that aren't particularly well served by transit, walking, and biking. So that per capita VMT was projected to go up. And if we can move some of that growth in and provide transit services, not just to that more compact growth, but to these outlying areas, as well as ped and bike, that's where we would hold that VMT constant.
So by extension, okay. So where, I was going to go somewhere else, but I won't. Have you done any benchmarking for VMT per capita at those other cities? I'm guessing you have that. Do you just have a feel for where we stand today? I actually don't know. I've never looked into it. We seem fairly compact. But I don't know if that plays out in the VMT per capita today.
It should. I think that is something we could get a hold of. The highway performance monitoring system is used to provide VMT for a variety of urbanized areas. And I think we could get our hands on some recent figures to see how those peer cities are doing on VMT per capita. I know I've sent an email to DK Kemp in Boulder, and some of us have talked with him. He's our bicycle coordinator. Years ago, Boulder had a similar goal to hold VMT levels. I think it was either to 1990 or 1995 levels. And for many years, at least as they reported it, they were able to maintain that. And so I've circled back with DK to see if that's something they're still doing. So hopefully I'll have that to report to you soon.
Thank you. I just have two more, if I can. Is there working papers or a draft plan out there to look at? So all I've been, and I haven't looked yet, so it may be right there in front of me. I just haven't looked yet. But all I've seen are kind of these high-level presentations, and I'm just wondering if there's something to look at with a little bit of detail.
No, but they're coming. We do have several reports on, literature review, current trends, most of our public outreach. But in terms of these detailed analyses, we don't. Those technical papers are coming.
Okay, then that's perfect. I'm kind of curious how the capital programs come together, but I could wait until I see that the $400 million ped and bike program over 8 years. That I just like to see kind of how you built that. The number is amazing.
Yeah, let me speak to that if we have time. So it is an amazing number, and it's a very rough number. So we looked at started kind of with the ATMP, and it has about a $200 million figure for all of those facilities over 4 tiers. And of course, as Miles mentioned, we only have $30 million to put towards that. When we estimated that we needed to quadruple our facilities, we did that in a very broad brush manner using our pedestrian and bicycle level of service components, which from those earlier slides, things like system completeness, connectivity, and crossings, etc. And so that's really quadrupling facilities, not investment. So here's the really rough part. So that ATMP and the $200 million is roughly doubling facilities. And then we double that again. And there's your $400 million.
Okay.
So that's how we arrived at that. And where I expect us to go is to take a couple traffic analysis zones and really build them out to show what that would look like in a couple areas. You know, the reality being the ATMP highlights gaps in the system that are needed in many ways right now. And so, you know, there's an excellent place to start. And if we could accelerate that in the next year, 8 years, that would be a huge undertaking and a huge win.
I appreciate that, Dave. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to follow up question on that question, and it's really for the whole TAC. I mean, as Jeff asked and Dave just described, we attempted to quantify these numbers very roughly. So when Jeff asked for a background technical report and how we came to these calculations, there isn't on those. I contacted Mountain Line and we confirmed what their current budget is, and to double the system would double it. And Dave described, you know, his estimates. And what I want to ask of this group as a group of technical people, are you comfortable with us moving forward saying, if you want to go in this direction, this is a sense of the costs that you're going to be looking at? Or conversely, are you uncomfortable with that? And do you feel that we would need to do something different?
Go ahead, Ann.
Thanks, Jason. To answer your question, Jeff, yes, I mean, especially since you confirmed you verified this with Mountain Line leadership, the need for transit service, increased transit service, certainly highlighting that as part of this plan. Mountain Line supportive of, and the budget number, that high level figure. I mean, this is a high level kind of view on the funding and the costs. So I'm comfortable with that. I would say the one thing is I'm looking at this one bullet point under the upward concept that might throw some interesting conversation from the public. Is the one plan is fiscally constrained, but the upward concept, the way it's shown, obviously is not limited by available funding. But in order to get the RTP done, I thought it actually ended up having to be a fiscally constrained document. So I don't know if there's some version of the upward concept that the ultimate recommendation needs to at least identify the costs and then show the future funding sources potentially. I mean, are you going to get questions like that from the public? If they see that bullet point, like, let's do, you know, we're proposing this, but we don't have a fiscally constrained budget.
Yeah, I really appreciate the question and the opportunity to respond to it. And I know, Mr. Chair, that Michelle had her hand up. This is a really key point. And our plan, and this slide says it, we have an onward plan, which is to build out the system as it's currently envisioned, the momentum that's established. That's the plan. The upward concept are a series of tools that the community could engage if they wanted to, that we're providing as available, you know, in our document. But the plan that we're recommending adopting is fiscally constrained. And we attempt to make very clear in here that the upward concepts, and it says the last bullet, not limited by available funding. So it's not a plan, it just, we wanted to do something more for the community to help the community understand if they wanted to move this in this direction, how they could do it and what it would cost.
Miles, if I could, I'm going to steal your response from the meeting this morning. This is very similar to how we treated the Lone Tree Overpass in Blueprint 2040. You know, based on existing funding, we could not afford the Lone Tree Overpass. And we did not put that in the plan. But we did say, if you want it, no, it's valuable, it does good things, it does these things. If you want it, Here's what it costs. Then you can decide, and as we know, they decided, through the tax commission and the voters to support that. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Michelle, did you still have a question, by the way? I just want to make sure to acknowledge if you had a question or not.
No, actually, Ann's question got me the answer I was looking for. In general, though, I guess to the question that Miles had about, are we comfortable? I think I'm on the fence, and I agree that, it looks like you did confirm the numbers with Mountain Line, but these are pretty significant policy changes. And I guess just from a public perception standpoint, it seems that without having the technical data, there could call into question, why are we going forward with these numbers and these assumptions without having that? So it's just kind of a general comment, not really a huge concern, but just something to be aware of, and I'm sure you are. Thanks.
Awesome. No, thank you. All right. Was there any additional questions or comments on this presentation?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to Michelle's point, Dave, do you have any response to that in terms of what we might still be able to do more or differently to alleviate that concern and quantify it a little more firmly?
No, she raises an excellent point, and where how our current model works, and we think it works well, is we take all of these factors that I mentioned, things like completing the system and the number of crossings against the amount of traffic and other matters, and we put them in this level of service score, and we've been able to use those to actually estimate investments, as well as fairly accurately estimate, demand for pedestrian and bicycle, and then also transit in another form, trips. And so we, as I said, when we looked at Proposition 419, we were able to say, well, if we build this many sidewalks, if we build this many crossings, and actually put those in specific places, we're able to get costs as well as the impact. It's a fairly big leap to go, okay, well, now to get this level of impact, and that's kind of where we worked backwards, this level of impact, what do those scores need to do? And that's where we got the quadrupling. And so, kind of connecting the dots back to the cost. I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we do hope to do is take a couple of geographic areas or traffic analysis zones and look at those components. And so show this is what it means. It might mean in an area like Country Club that we actually do need to punch in some new connections and create that connectivity. And in other places that might mean we need to put in much more frequent crossings, and maybe they're grade separated at a considerable cost. But then we can actually look at the scores in those particular areas and show the number of facilities that we think we need. And hopefully that has not been done yet, but hopefully that helps illustrate that level of investment and level of activity that's needed.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions? Any other comments? All right, hearing none. Again, Miles and Dave, fantastic presentation. I definitely echo what Michelle said in the chat earlier. All right, let's move on then to item B, the federal and state funding update. Miles, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the TAC, I'm going to stay pretty high level on this too. And Jason, I just want to confirm with you, you've got a couple of items and I think you need at least 45 minutes. Is that right? To be able to do the presentations you're looking to do for ADOT?
Yeah, I mean, I can swim through it pretty fast depending on the time. No worry about me.
Okay, great. Well, federal and state funding update. Quite a bit has been happening. Some of you may have heard that the bipartisan infrastructure law passed, and I say that facetiously. This report is really to get clearer on and communicate to all of you what it is that Metro Plan has been focusing on. So I'm going to go through a few bullets here. The Director's Task Force. Director's Task Force refers to all the people who run COGS and MPOs like Metro Plan around the state. So that includes Maricopa Association of Governments and Pima Association of Governments. And a task force was put together to be able to have everybody who runs one of those organizations put together a joint request and go to ADOT and say, we've looked at this with you and your staff. Here's what we are asking you to do. Because there's such a huge increase in funding that we want to be involved in how those decisions are made. And furthermore, the state has a responsibility to consult with us all, and they do that anyway. That's the way we just work together. But the point of the task force was to say, we want to help. We really want to meet you in the middle. So we've been working on this for 8 or 9 months, and a letter is attached in your packet, which I'll scroll to in a minute. And essentially it makes the point that small MPOs and COGS like Metro Plan have not had an increase in surface transportation block grant funding in over 10 years. I think it's been 20. The fact is nobody knows how long the number has been locked or frozen at this level. And when I say nobody, I mean, we've had meetings with staff at ADOT. At some point in the past, the number was frozen and it just hasn't increased. So while all the small COGS and MPOs have been frozen, every year the federal government provides direct funding to ADOT and to Maricopa Association of Governments and to Pima Association of Governments, and they incrementally increase. And with the bipartisan infrastructure law, it was about a 20% increase, depending on the pot of money you're looking at. In any case, they've all gone up. Small COGS and MPOs have been flat. So we make a point, and I'm going to scroll down to the letter, a letter to John Halikowski that basically says, it's been flat for us for 10 years. We're asking for a $4.3 million increase to be distributed to small COGS and MPOs to kind of bring us up to close to what MAG, PAG, and ADOT have experienced. Now, one of the key points I want to make here, and you can read the letter on your own, I don't need to go through every bullet. In going through this process, looking for a joint recommendation that included MAG and PAG, as it turns out, with our request and our recommendation, there's nothing in this for MAG and PAG. They wouldn't get a penny from this. However, MAG and PAG have signed on to this letter, and their executive directors are saying, you really need to do something for these small MPOs and COGS. So I want to just give a shout out to Eric and Farhad, who run those organizations, for their magnanimousness and willingness to do things that really weren't a direct benefit to them, but they see how it needs to be done to be fair. And this letter is going to be going to John Halikowski probably by the end of this week, if not by next week. So before I go on to the next item, I just shared a lot. I want to see if there's any questions or comments on that. Okay. Next, Safe Streets for All. There was a detailed update on this last time, and if there are questions, Mandia Gonzalez is here and can answer them. Essentially, a grant was submitted, $200,000 to do a safety action plan, and really the focus is on vulnerable road users. So the idea is to get the money to do a plan, and then get the money to build the stuff that's in the plan. So it's a process that goes on, and this is the first step. Questions or comments on that? And then Mandy, or Dave, is there anything you wanted to add that you think the TAC needs to know at this point? Okay.
Yeah, hey, before you move on, I'm sorry, I was finding the mute button. Yeah, I do want to, commend Mandy for her efforts and bring to your attention that we are doing this, should it be funded, when it's funded. We'll be doing this in coordination with the Regional Strategic Transportation Safety Plan, the RSTSP. That is kicked off. We're doing that in coordination with NACOG and CYMPO. And so you'll be hearing from us on that. We also have the SS4A components built into that. But just believe that given what you just heard on the regional transportation plan and the focus on pedestrian bicycles and the focus on those same modes through the current administration, that this vulnerable user focus and addition to the RSTSP is important. So thank you.
Thank you. Mandy, you turned your camera on. Did you want to add something?
Oh, no, but thanks for the opportunity to write my first grant. I have my fingers crossed.
You did great. Thank you. Okay, the next bullet.
And I'm sorry, Ann's hands up. Go ahead, Ann.
Oh, sorry, Jeff, if are you hitting the smart signal technology? Is that the one you're?
Yeah, that's where I'm going
Okay,
next.
I'll hold my comment. Thanks.
Okay. So signal technology, Dave submitted a grant for us working closely with Jeff Bowman and with ADOT over a year ago now that was submitted, and it took the feds about a year to make that decision. We didn't receive that grant, and with Bill coming out, things were kind of repackaged and put out somewhat differently. There are two grant programs that we could kind of resubmit the signal technology for. One is the SMART program, Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation Discretionary Grant Program. It doesn't seem like that's probably the best fit for this particular grant. The other one, which is really the successor to the last funding source, is ATTAIN, Advanced Transportation Technology and Innovation. So we're going to be participating in various trainings coming up in webinars so that we can apply for one or both of these funds for this project. And I think I'll stop there since I think Ann wants to ask a question about this.
Yeah, actually, it's just an opportunity for MetroPlan to consider with looking at this signal technology type of grant. If you wanted to chat with Mountain Line about our existing grants, that some of which are available for improving the Milton Phoenix intersection for our transit related to our DCC. We might be able to, there might be opportunity to leverage some of those grants onto one of these new grants. If you're looking at anything in the Milton corridor, for example, for smart technology. So just food for thought.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, I think I'll continue on with the Governor's Smart Fund. Another SMART grant, this one's state, not federal, $50 million available. The state legislature created this, and it's for small cities, towns, and counties. So we, as one of those small cities and towns and counties eligible, can apply for funding as match for federal grants. So this is really a great thing that I appreciate the state, the governor for doing. We have talked about when we did our SWOT analysis last April, when we looked at what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to, I'm smiling because we have so many acronyms. When we did our SWOT analysis for federal funding, we said one of the risks really or threats is we don't have enough local match. So by the state coming up with this, it's another competitive process. But I will tell you when, for example, we apply for the 1.8 million for signal technology, we'll ask the state to put up the match for it. As soon as it opens up, if we fit in under the deadline, we're going to ask the state Smart Fund to put up the match for the Safe Streets for All grant. And I want to share this information because all of our member agencies might be able to apply for this funding. I do want to say to our friends at the City of Flagstaff, I recently asked specifically if grants had already been approved, like the 32 million for the downtown mile, if we could look for smart funding to help support that grant. And the answer was no. It has to be new grants that have not yet been awarded. So I get it, but I asked because I was hopeful that there might be some additional match to come in. I'll pause there again, Mr. Chairman, to see if there's any questions or comments.
Any questions, any comments thus far?
This is Dave. I'd like to just put in a plug. I know we don't have ADOT widely represented here, but we did seek ADOT to be a partner on the ATC-MTD grant last time. And my impression was it was just too small in terms of their participation to branch into, this technology for this area at that limited size. Perhaps through the Smart Fund, we could increase the size of that grant ask and perhaps get ADOT on board. So an opportunity. Thank you.
Excellent. No, thank you, Dave.
Okay.
Any
the next
other?
one-
Oh, go
sorry.
ahead, Miles.
I was just going to go on to the next one if you're ready.
Yes.
Okay. So the Greater Arizona Initiative, MetroPlan was part of this Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, an effort last year to get $50 million worth of infrastructure projects in the state of Arizona. And the MetroPlan request was for 2.6 million, and this would have been state funding to go to the Lone Tree Corridor. And you may recall we went through a process of identifying and the TAC approving and the board approving. That was our project. Well, as it happened, the state ultimately did not fund that initiative. And our TAC is continuing to look in this next budget year how they can pursue it again and fix whatever was wrong so that it's successful this time. So I will keep you posted on that. And I guess I'll just say, just want to add, I talked to Kevin Adam, who runs our TAC, and he said that really at this point, they're waiting to see what happens in the elections to finalize their, approach with the legislature. They want to know who they're dealing with first, I guess. All right, and the next one is the Inflation Reduction Act. This one I threw in here again. I don't know if I'll bring it back again, but one of the provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act is $50 million. Not a huge amount of money nationally, but for subgrants to units of local government like MetroPlan or any of the member agencies to build capacity to actually deliver surface transportation projects. So, what I've always heard from our member agencies, great, we got a grant and now we actually need to go build it and do it. And all that takes staff, and it's an ongoing process. And I think the Inflation Reduction Act may make money available so we can potentially get grants to hire people to, keep the momentum going. And that really concludes my report. I think I already shared the letter to Director Halikowski. And Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Miles. Appreciate it. And I want to open the floor. Any additional questions or comments for this update by Miles? All right, hearing none. we will move on then to final item. Actually, that's not the final item, but almost the final item. Item C, the ADOT Long Range Transportation Plan update and the Milton US 180 update. And I got about 1 hour, just actually 59 minutes. So going to try to knock it out within then, so, or before that. So, all right, so I'm up. So I'm going to share the screen right now. And let's go screen 1. All right, tell me when you can see my screen.
It's trying to come on. I haven't,
Okay,
There you go.
there it is.
I can see, you can see it. Okay, fantastic, excellent, excellent. All right, also just let me know too if something's in the chat for whatever reason. My chat box is not coming up. Let me see if I can get this up. But yeah, anything comes in the chat, just let me know and I'll acknowledge it. All right, here we go. So let's start with the long range transportation plan. All right. Okay, so a little bit about the state transportation plan. Again, this is something that ADOT does every 5 years with a statewide multimodal focus. So with our long-range transportation plan, in accordance with state and federal requirements, we're responsible for updating this, again, like I said, every 5 years to reflect changing transportation challenges and conditions. So with our long-range transportation plan is not project-oriented plan, rather it's a policy document establishing broad goals, objectives, and strategies to work toward the vision for Arizona's future transportation system. So this long-range transportation plan update we're currently doing is going to build on the foundation of the last long-range transportation plan update, which was adopted back in 2017, while adding elements that have changed since this adoption, such as new requirements, new regulations per the IIJA bill, Federal Transportation Act. So in addition, this update is going to incorporate new performance data and trends to ensure that the long-range transportation plan provides a level of adaptability in the face of identified changes. So key to this effort is the balance, the technical approach with our stakeholder outreach and information, both in terms of the process and the outcome. All right, so as far as the long-range transportation team organization, I'm the ADOT PM for it. The consultant PM, our prime is going to be WSP, and we do have Kimley Horn, Y2K, and Ally Interpreters as our subs. Of course, all our COGs or MPOs like MetroPlan and Travel Partners with input. Our public input that we'll start going out for in mid-October. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Also, a review steering committee. That's a group of folks within MPD that actually assists me in reviewing any of the working papers and deliverables. We also have a policy steering committee. That's representatives from our executive leadership for ADOT that also reviews the deliverables and it gets updates on the long-range transportation plan. And finally, our technical advisory committee, which I'll show here in the next slide, which encompasses all our departments within ADOT that are affected by the long-range transportation plan. And you can see right there on your screen here, we have all the districts. We got TSMO, Civil Rights, Tribal Transportation Research Center, a wide variety of different departments and representatives that look at this. Look at these updates, look at these deliverables on a monthly basis. All right, so going on to each of the tasks. And these ones have already been completed. The working papers for this, by the way, will be available on our public survey website, which is going to go live in mid-October. So all these working papers in its complete form and also 2-page summary sheets are going to be available on that website. So just a little bit more of a teaser on that one. So our first working paper, our project management plan, that's more just an internal process, administrative in nature. That it just includes identification, analysis of all the federal and state laws, policies, regulations relevant to the development of a statewide long-range plan. Since we do have such a large team on the project with full consultants, in addition to all the ADOT staff, again, this is our guide for our team as we go through the process. Working paper number 2 is the IIJA analysis. And again, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I know that Miles mentioned it earlier. We live in a world of acronyms, but with the IIJA analysis, that's an analysis of the transportation components that directly affect ADOT, specifically detailing the federal opportunities and state opportunities of this act. So really focusing on the federal funding, kind of the new opportunities, new requirements that we have to go by. The working paper number 3, which is the current system conditions report of the MAG and PAG regions, we decided to make this a separate working paper because the focal point of this long-range transportation plan is on the state highway system outside of the MAG and PAG region. As most of you know, in the MAG and PAG region, a lot of their roads, a lot of their planning, they have through proposition monies and other monies of their own that's already allocated to those specific regions. So a lot of the decisions, a lot of the funding, a lot of the analysis that we're doing is, again, state highway system in greater Arizona outside of MAG and PAG. However, we also acknowledge that a lot of the changes that happen to MAG and PAG are going to directly affect greater Arizona. That's where the most growth is at. That's where the most volume of traffic. That's where all the that's where the projected most of the projected population growth is going to occur. So it does affect all greater Arizona. So we have to keep that in mind as we do analysis on a greater statewide level. So with the current conditions report from MAG and PAG, that was actually done in direct coordination with MAG and PAG planners. In basically using the numbers, using the analysis from their own long range plans that they both had recent updates to. All right, next thing is our public involvement plan. Again, this plan was conducted according to a cooperative process involving ADOT staff, public agency staff, elected officials, our non-metropolitan local officials and tribal officials do developing this plan. Now, this right here, this public involvement plan is a living document that we're definitely going to adapt and adjust as we go through the long-range transportation plan. So as far as our public involvement is concerned, again, I've already mentioned that we are going to open up a public survey website with not just for information about the long-range transportation plan and our deliverables, but also our survey to really see what is the priorities of the public, what are the what is important to each of our communities throughout the state when it comes to our state highway system. So that's going to be a platform for that. In addition to that, we are also going to have 3 in-person meetings in about February, March to discuss the long-range transportation plan. And by that point, we will have completed our multimodal needs analysis, our revenue projection, and started our gap analysis. So we're going to have a lot to report on by that point when we get to the in-person meetings. There'll be 3. One will be in Tucson, one will be in Phoenix, and one will be in Flagstaff. So we are still setting the dates, the times, the locations, specific locations within those cities on that. In addition to those 3 in-person meetings, we're also going to have a statewide virtual meeting, and that will also be in the February-March timeframe. So just want to give everyone heads up on that. All right, our task 3, that's our defining our guiding vision. Right now, this is in progress. We have a draft status that we're currently reviewing. So with this, and I won't say these are the 7 goals that we have identified for our plan. I won't read them verbatim. You can see it on the screen there. But with this guiding vision document, this is developing a strategic vision for the long-range transportation plan, along with the policy level goals, as you see on the screen here, that will guide the development of the long-range transportation plan framework. It will anchor the policy and strategy our system and modal goals, objectives, and performance measures, and also the policy alternatives analysis leading toward project selection. So this is actually going to really guide into, once we get into our multimodal needs and our revenue projections, these are goals that, or at least we're aiming for there. And so before I start talking about our task 4, I want to pause here because I know I'm going pretty quickly through this. Any questions, any comments to this point? Nope, hearing none. All right, I will move on then. So task 4, this is our multimodal needs analysis. So with this, we know that according to our last long-range transportation plan update, again, adopted back in 2017, ADOT's total funding over that 25-year horizon was estimated to total about $31 billion in inflation-adjusted dollars, $43 billion in unadjusted dollars. So after you account for operations, maintenance, and support for local transit agencies, approximately $22.8 billion in inflation-adjusted dollars were expected to be available for highway capital spending, which resulted in an estimated 25-year highway funding gap of over $30 billion. Needless to say, again, that was one of the big reasons why at the time we made preservation of our system the highest priority. Just because we just didn't have enough money for a lot of the bigger expansion projects in greater Arizona and a lot of other needs outside of preservation. So with this plan update, one of the major components is we're going to revisit these revenue numbers. And just to determine if they change by analyzing 2 factors. First of all, the existing conditions, projected needs on the state highway system, and then also looking at the non-highway modes. That includes transit, passenger and freight rail, aviation, and non-motorized modes. So as far as where this is at, this has been started. We are currently data gathering from our different technical groups amongst ADOT just to get those type of numbers and getting started from there. All right, so task 5, once we have completed our multimodal needs analysis, we'll go right to our baseline projected multimodal transportation system revenues. So as you can see here, we're going to develop 4 revenue scenarios. First one is reduced revenue scenario. That's the worst case scenario, basically considering a reduction in federal and state funding revenue. Then we'll also look at baseline revenue, which is assuming a continuity of existing transportation funding sources and no revisions to existing user fees over the next 25-year planning horizon. We'll also look at an increased revenue scenario, which is the best case scenario, considering an increase in federal and state federal revenue. And then finally, our vision revenue scenario, that is our pie in the sky. That's considering a revenue amount that would be sufficient to meet the needs and deliver the outcomes of implementing the first 25 years of the guiding principle that was defined in the task 3 that I discussed earlier. So once we have these 4 revenue scenarios developed, alternative investment choices will be defined for each scenario by considering mixes between our 3 investment categories, and that's preservation, modernization, and expansion. And so once we're done, the consultant is done with that, then a final recommended investment choice for the 3 investment categories will be developed just based on foreseeable funding amounts predicted for the first 5 years after the long-range transportation plan adoption. So, and the reason we kind of go through all that is because we want to make sure that with this long-range transportation plan, it's flexible enough to adjust for funding throughout the life of the plan should economic conditions or funding amounts change. I'll give you 2 great examples that everyone knows. 2009, when everything economically just crashed and burned, and then 2020, when we had the worldwide COVID pandemic, and that kind of just changed dramatically the way we spend money and just the way we kind of went about business. So again, we need a plan that we can can do the best of times, but also the worst of times. By the way, knock on wood, pray that doesn't happen anytime soon. All right, so task 6. So once we're done with all that, our multimodal transportation system gap analysis is kind of the final task before we wrap up everything. So per the findings of our needs analysis of our system revenues, projected deficiencies on the state's multimodal transportation system will need to be assessed. So this is what we call full state deficiencies, and that will quantify the cost over the 25-year timeframe required to address expected deficiencies and to achieve across the board acceptable performance on the state transportation system. So again, we're going to look at some of the factors we'll look at when we do this final gap analysis is quantification of costs based on current ADOT policies for system conditions and performance using minimal tolerable conditions to define deficient conditions. So again, we look at the pavement condition, bridge conditions, mobility, freight. Another factor we look at is an evaluation of how all the ADOT subprograms that nominate projects for consideration in the 5-year program allocate money and how that should be performed. So, you know, that includes identifying investments needed to keep the facilities at acceptable levels or to meet spending targets that are set by FHWA. And finally, another factor we will consider as we do this gap analysis is evaluating how the new programs that are defined in the IIJA can address identified full state deficiencies. So again, bringing it all together in this particular task. And then our final task is our final long-range transportation plan. So with this, with the draft long-range transportation plan, we should have that done by February, March, just in time for our in-person meetings. And I'll get to you in just a moment, Dave. Let me just wrap up on this task 7. I just saw your hands up. And then we'll take comments, you know, putting in comments, not just from our public comments, but also from our state transportation board members. And our final report, we should have wrapped up by May for final adoption in June. So that's kind of the game plan right there. Dave, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to raise a point in terms of the multimodal gap analysis and the standards that are used. It's the points that have been raised in corridor profile studies by ADOT, and you're going to talk about the Milton and 180 corridor master plans studies there as well. Many state facilities are barriers to pedestrian and bicycle mobility. And, you know, there has been, to my understanding, no analysis, and I don't even believe a standard that says what is a sufficient number of crossings to support good pedestrian and bicycle mobility, and relatively little acknowledgement by ADOT that they have a role in providing sufficient crossings and mobility for pedestrian and bicycle mobility. So as you dive into this in the long range transportation plan, I hope ADOT has a candid conversation with all of the stakeholders about what a minimal tolerable condition for that actually is. Thank you.
No, and Dave, I'll respond to your comment, and I appreciate the comment because you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That is something that not just needs to be addressed, but needs to be looked at a little bit further. As you know, as far as getting that mobility access. Now, one of the goals, and I'll let me go back right here that I mentioned earlier. To your point. If you see goal number 5 on the screen, support fair and equitable access to the state highway system. That really goes along the lines of what you said, Dave. That really does. I mean, again, because that's equitable access to healthcare, education, jobs, recreation, mobility access, you know, pedestrian access, especially when it comes to our system, is a very important thing to consider. Not just how we go about that with our standards, but also how we measure that. How we, how we track that. What is the level of success? What does success mean when it comes to that particular goal? That is an excellent point, and that's something that I've actually already had internal discussions about. Can't really say anything too public right now because we're still working out a lot of the kinks. This is one of many things we're talking about, but the reason I'm mentioning that to you, Dave, is because we are taking it seriously. We are trying to at least take a few steps forward in that regard. So again, I appreciate that comment, Dave. Go ahead, Miles.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Jason, you said this in one of the earlier slides, I'm sure, but what are you considering the launch date of this particular planning effort?
When you say planning effort, are you talking about the public survey, or are you talking about the total long-range transportation plan?
Total plan that you want to have adopted in May. When was the launch of that effort?
Oh, the launch of this effort. Yeah, the launch of this effort, and I'll go to the next slide, was back in May 22nd. That's when we had a notice to proceed on this.
Okay. Okay, good. I mean, I'm curious just because it's a lot to do and your schedule is a little bit shorter than Metro Plans had for our region. So curious about that. And I think that's great. And then do you know, or are you at liberty to say what the budget is for the, consulting team to come in and do this work?
Sure, I can say that publicly because it's public record now, $1 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. And go ahead.
Thanks, Jason. So I'm seeing a schedule that says November multimodal needs. That's the component where your consultants are obviously systemically looking statewide? Would there be more of a direct opportunity for maybe our TAC to either provide some feedback or what the right timing to be able to provide feedback into that multimodal needs assessment?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. Actually, that once we're done with that, once we kind of did our own internal, kind of scrubbing and review of it, it will actually be available on that public survey website that's going live in mid-October. Now, with the multiple needs analysis, again, the draft will be at the end of October. Again, that's going to go through ADOT finance review, our review, and then once we're done with that and we is ready for public consumption, that's when we'll put it on there. And that's at that point, oh yes, please go through it. If there's anything that we need to add to that or any comments, that's the time to do it. So does that answer your question? Awesome. Good stuff. All right. Any other additional questions or comments? Because that's pretty much the end of it there. That was it in a nutshell. Of course, I can talk about it a lot more than that, but that was just more the overview. All right, seeing none. All right, excellent. I will move on then to Milton. So let me minimize this here.
Sorry.
Oh.
Nope, go for it. It's yours.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Let me go get the Milton one. That's a US 180. We'll do that last. Let's go Milton first. All right. So let me go reading view. Okay, so corridor master plan presentation for Milton Road. So it has been a very long while since we've talked about this project. Again, this has been 5 years in the making. I know a lot of folks on this TAC probably haven't even been involved with this since the beginning, outside of Dave, and I believe Ann, you've been involved with it since its inception. So again, so a lot of the slides I'll go through today are literally going to be review for you and for you, Dave. Matter of fact, if you need to correct me on any of that, let me know. So, and again, a lot of the folks from ADOT, for example, that have been involved with this corridor master plan are either no longer with ADOT or have moved on to other positions outside of the North Central District. So it's been a while. It's been a while, but it's been good. You know, it's really put in a really good product here. So, all right. So with the Milton Road CMP, the study area was less than 2 miles. It started from Forest Meadows Street to the south right here, going up to ending at Route 66 and Beaver Street here.
So if you're screen sharing, I am at least not seeing it.
Oh, geez, did it stop screen sharing? Wow. Okay. Okay. Thank you for telling me. I would have just kept going and, tell everyone to use their imagination. All right. Tell me when you can see the screen.
Not yet. Looks like it's trying. There it is.
Hey, okay. Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for the heads up. I appreciate it. All right, cool. All right, so let me go on to the next screen, next slide. So with the schedule, as I said, 5 years in the making, was started back in the fall of 2017. During that time, 2 public meetings, public survey, addressed 273 comments in building the final report for the Milton Corridor Master Plan. A consensus was reached on January 28th, 2021 on the recommended alternatives, and we'll talk more about that as we go here. And for Milton Road, the recommended alternative was the no-build hybrid. And again, we'll discuss that here in just a moment. So with these objectives, again, I won't read them verbatim on the screen. A lot of you are already familiar with this. These study objectives came directly from the charter, which was created when the CMPs were started. And again, this is in no particular order of importance. So it also should be noted that from the onset of this project, a partnership approach was utilized to strive to reach a consensus on all major decisions with partner agencies. And that included the City of Flagstaff, Metro Plan, Mountain Line, Coconino County, NAU, the U.S. Forest Service, FHWA, and the BNSF Railway. All right, so going to some of the outcomes from this particular study. So this table you see right here, again, if you are very familiar with this already, these summarizes the travel time changes of each alternative on Milton Road. And those alternatives, alternative 5, 6A, 6B, 13, if you want to really see a cross section of it, it's already available on the ADOT website. Those are different build alternatives that had like 12-foot center lanes, 15-foot center lanes, mid blocks. So just different build alternatives there. So with this particular traffic model included several pedestrian, bicycle, transit user spot improvements proposed by the project partners. And that considered both the safety standards, such as longer crossing times, and improvements needed to enhance community character. And that's like wider sidewalks and more frequent pedestrian crossings. So unfortunately, the traffic modeling results indicate that all the build alternatives that will put front, the no build plus, for example, the alternatives 5, 6A, 6B, and 13 would perform worse than the no build in the southbound AM peak and in both directions during the PM peak. So simply put, we couldn't build our way out of congestion on Milton Road, I guess is the big takeaway from this table. So looking at this right here at the tier 3, went through 3 tiers of alternatives analysis during the course of the corridor master plans. The public survey findings expressed significant opposition to additional right-of-way acquisition and potential negative impacts to private properties along the Milton Road frontage. So while some of the public feedback and survey findings are conflicting, the project partners discussed and ultimately achieved consensus that the broader interpretation of the survey results suggested that while the public would love to see this great wider great street with multimodal characteristics and enhanced streetscape elements, as was in those build options I discussed earlier, the findings also suggest that the public didn't wish to see the widening of Milton Road at the expense of private property acquisition. So, and again, with this, with the public survey results, again, even though it showed the most support for a build option, alternative A, you will see that in the next slide, the public was not willing to accept the right-of-way impacts to build that. Also, ADOT was also concerned with the negative traffic operation impacts of all the build alternatives. For example, constructing high investment build alternatives that result in the impacts to traffic operations. And it just felt it wasn't a practical investment choice. So right here, let me go to the next slide here. If it will let me, there we go. So again, you see right there, again, the unwillingness of the public to accept the right-of-way impacts for alternative 5. So as a result of all this analysis, all the public input, and all the consensus by the project partners, no build hybrid was the recommended alternative for Milton Road. So as the name applies, this recommended alternatives is a hybrid for two reasons. So first, it offers an effective balance between achieving desired project partner and public desired multimodal and streetscape enhancements to Milton Road, while maintaining minimal ADOT design standards in existing traffic travel operations, basically, and or not degrading traffic operations, together with an implementation cost that's substantially less than the build alternatives, and it's more realistic and achievable in the near term. Second, the practical implementation of this no build hybrid occurred in hybrid manner. It depends on the existing and varied nature of the current Milton Road facilities and features along the various segments of the Milton Road corridor, because as we all know, it kind of varies as you go even along that 2-mile stretch. So that said, again, with the no build hybrid, it's not a one size fits all solution, but at least it accommodates as best as we can with as many different projects as we can do along that stretch. All right, so what are you going to see here? These are you'll see like all the projects that were identified, and I believe there was 24 of them. I'm double checking that right now. Yes, I believe there's 24. They were actually within the road improvements. And so kind of segmented, you can see A, B, C, D. And again, the cost estimates, the line items for each of these segmented improvements are already available on the ADOT website. So if you want to take a closer look at those, again, these are all short-term projects. Kind of like, again, within the road, and also partners that can, are project partners that can fund behind the curve improvements as funding becomes available. So this kind of just shows the segments here. And then continuing on right here till we get to just about past Humphreys Road. All right, so that's kind of the short term, which I just showed. That's and also you'll see on the ADOT website, that's phase one. Phase one, kind of like, again, the low-hanging fruit projects that we can do here, hopefully in the next few years, next 3 to 5 years. Now, with the long-term projects, and these are the recommended alternatives for long-term, kind of building out the road. Again, this is going to take right away. This is going to take redevelopment of adjacent parcels to kind of reach a lot of these phase two long-term projects. And these are more longer term. This is looking maybe 10 years, 15 years down the line. And so with these long-term, this kind of shows a cross section right here as far as a long-term solution with no right turn lanes. And then across sections with adding 1 right turn lane. And then finally adding 2 right turn lanes. So kind of showing some examples there of what the cross section looked like going with a long-term solution there. And before I continue, I see something in the chat. I saw one in the chat. Miles, can you read the chat to me, please? I don't know if that's public or direct to me.
Sure, let me see if I can find it here. It says, oh, Jess McNally needs to step away. He has a P&Z commission hearing and has to drop off.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, just want to make sure I wasn't missing any questions or comments. So, okay, so awesome. So with that said, with the short-term implementation, it's approximately about 37 million. Again, we also understand with construction cost index, it could be a little bit more than that. Again, with the short term, that's a phase one projects. That's the within the road improvements and behind the curve improvements. With the phase two long-term, kind of really building out the Milton Road, redeveloping the adjacent parcels and, in right away, that's 95 million. It's probably going to be more than 100 million when everything is said and done on that, as far as the total cost of those particular improvements. And again, important to know, funding has not been identified to implement any of these short-term or long-term projects. So that's it right there is a very, very quick overview. Again, if you want something a little bit more in depth that really goes through what, through a lot of the analysis and goes through a little bit deeper into the weeds, we did include those presentations, those bigger presentation slides on the ADOT project websites for both Milton and US 180, which I'll discuss here after this one. Before I turn it over for questions, comments, I just want to say this, next steps. So next steps is this, and again, one of the big things I know we've with our Flagstaff, with our Metro Plan partners, again, a lot of time was invested into these corridor master plans, and I really respect that and acknowledge that. So with that said, I know that one of the big, I guess, criticisms, and it is a valid criticism of a lot of these big studies that ADOT does, is that we do the study, it's a great study, great recommendations, and then it just collects dust on the shelf and nothing's ever done with it. And that's something I don't want happening here. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to be able to do every single project, because that's not realistic, unless someone has 35 million or 90 million hiding underneath the couch, in which case let me know and we can get a lot of this stuff done. But however, with next steps, I've already started internal conversations with our North Central District as far as looking at particular projects that are of importance to the district. We plan to talk with the city and talk with our Metro Plan partners with Mountain Lion as far as what are your priorities. Basically, what in the next 3 to 5 years, if we can do some of these projects, what would be the higher priority? So those conversations are coming. Just FYI. And as far as the funding source, we are looking at several options as we speak for some of these projects. And again, for the bigger projects, it will take partnerships. Because again, we're not going to have all the money in the world to do a lot of this stuff. But if the city, if Mountain Lion, if Metro Plan is willing to partner, we can probably do a little bit more. So those conversations offline are coming, and those conversations internally have already been started. So just wanted to put that out there too. So with that said, I'll stop right there. Questions, comments, anything on Milton, the Milton Corridor Master Plan? Go ahead, Ann.
Thanks, Jason, for that synopsis. I guess definitely happy to hear that ADOT wants to talk about some implementation strategies for funding and or partnerships. So definitely look forward to hearing from ADOT on that. And I guess just kind of having been involved in that project when it started, and I know there's a few others on the call that were also, we did all talk about walking into this knowing that there wasn't money specifically from ADOT for anything in this corridor. And had identified, at one point, some options for partnerships with transit. And I just, obviously that's been put on hold, but definitely would be interested in hearing what ADOT's thinking about the next, 5 years and a long-term strategy. I think from our perspective, one of the most immediate things that, if anything we can do in that corridor is head crossings, is the safety of the pedestrian crossings and bikes crossing. That's extremely important. And I guess one thing in your presentation, there was, if I recall, from the public standpoint, the trade-off on time lost sitting in traffic. There was, I thought, data that did demonstrate that people were willing to sit a little bit longer in that Milton corridor to, wait for a crossing for a pedestrian. So, and I know there's a lot of data that you've got in the synopsis, but I do think that was a really key component that came out of one of those public surveys that goes back to just the public's desire for those crossings. So thanks.
Excellent. No, thank you for those comments. Really appreciate that. And Yeah. So, and again, you know, because you have the kind of historic reference of the project being with it the entire time. Again, that would be a great slide. I probably have run across that slide many times. My apologies for not including that in this overview, but I really appreciate you stating that, and that is a very important takeaway, you know, for the TAC to hear. So thank you for that, Ann. All right, any other questions or comments on Milton Corridor Master Plan?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of things, but I'd like to let everyone else go first.
Oh, Miles, don't be shy. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the energy that you bring to this and your statement that you don't want a plan to just be a plan. You actually want to get things done. That means a lot to me. And I think that's what we need. You started out the introduction saying that this process has been going on, I think it's 6 years now.
Oh, I said 5. I was being nice.
Yeah.
You just added a year, man. Okay. Yeah. It's been going on for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was at the city when this started in 2015. So I'm going to say 7. I'm not trying to be nice or mean, just, you know, accurate. And, you know, that's in contrast to, I asked you about the time frame for the statewide plan, and you're doing it in a year. And of course, you know, one of the things you acknowledge at the beginning is most of the people who started the plan aren't here any longer. And that's really one of the costs in having it go on and on. So I know that I've started really getting involved in this when I came over to Metro Plan almost 4 years ago. Dave has been involved from the beginning. Other people in the room have. Can you just remind me, Jason, how long you've been involved in this particular Milton plan?
Since the beginning of 2021. So
Okay.
just last year.
Great, thanks. And I just want to make sure I'm, you know, framing things correctly. There's been a question, does Metro Plan and maybe the other member agencies, does ADOT want us to endorse or adopt this plan? And the approach that we'd taken for quite a while now, over many, you know, years of discussions, was I, as Metro Plan, would like to be able to take this forward to my board and ask for adoption. And my board has reviewed it at least once, at least twice, actually, at one period, a couple of work sessions. But my understanding now really is that ADOT isn't looking for the partners to adopt the plan. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. Now, with that said, if there was conversations on adoption of the plan, again, that came before my time. And I think the folks that would at ADOT that would actually have like some institutional knowledge of that, again, are gone. So again, my understanding, and like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm right, because I haven't been with this process since the beginning. But my understanding is that no, it doesn't need adoption. You know, we've completed the plan. This acts as a base of conversation to actually start getting some of these projects hopefully implemented and done. But that's the way that I've seen it. And when I've talked to other folks within ADOT and PD, that's the way they see it. So I'd never heard of adoption. I've also reviewed the documents too, just kind of reviewed it, went through it. I didn't see any requirement for adoption by Metro Plan or by the partners on it. So, but like I said, I'm not sitting here saying I'm right, you know, so because it's been a long while. So that's my understanding though.
No, I think you are right. That is my understanding now as well, even though maybe this was just my intention, was as the regional transportation planning organization wanting to adopt a plan that, you know, one of the member agencies put together that runs right through the center of our region. And also thinking the city of Flagstaff might want to, you know, ADOT might want the city of Flagstaff to adopt it. but I get that we're not there. And that ADOT has done the work over the past 6 or 7 years, and the plan has come to completion, and you're going to adopt it. And the purpose now is to inform, the people in the community what you're planning. That's where we're at with this right now. Is that correct?
That is correct. And, again, as I mentioned before, with those conversations that we're going to have, start determining together in collaboration, again, what are the priorities short term, what is realistic to do in the short term, and then long term, how we're going to fund it, what is the bigger priorities. So yeah, those are the conversations that are next. Those are the essential next steps to make, again, a lot of these projects identified happen.
Okay. And then this isn't a question. This is my perspective. I just want to share for the record, really. As I've been involved in working through this process, we got to the point, I feel like, where we were able to have captured in the vision of this plan that we had a vision for something bigger than it always being kind of status quo and never making a change. And I'm really glad that's in there, because I feel like even though it's still a heavy lift, ADOT is giving the community a plan where, if as local governments or as the private sector, we identify a project and come up with funding, there's an opening within this plan, permission basically to come back and say, hey, we found a solution that's better and we want to bring it back and we want to partner with ADOT to get it done. And I think that's a really important doorway that needs to stay open, and I'm glad that it is.
Absolutely. And I really do appreciate that comment. And I'll go further along that comment, Miles. Again, with this plan, and that you said it perfectly, it is a doorway. It's a doorway to see, like, okay, what we can make happen, and what can we fund? And that doesn't just include the identified projects here. I'm going to go with the elephant in the room. It also includes the ones that consensus wasn't reached. As everyone knows, consensus wasn't reached on several of the at-grade pedestrian crossings. Doesn't mean it's never going to happen. Those are identified. However, a lot of the folks, for example, that were against that were ADOT, are no longer there. So the door is open, for that, to bring that back to the table with the district, and again, like I said, I'm not saying that as some little secret. I'm just saying that as put in perspective on utilizing this plan. So again, a lot of those things can potentially happen, through conversation, through collaboration. So I just want to put that out there too for our partners. Like I said, I liked what you said, Miles. You said it very, very well. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, any other comments before I go right to US 180 and swim through it in 10 minutes or less? Nope. All right. Here we go. Okay. Let me minimize that. Let me get US 180 up. And I purposely saved US 180 for last, because I know this has the least amount of controversy. So I saved it for last, the easiest one for last. So let me get this. There we go. All right. Can everyone still see my screen, by the way? Okay, good,
Yes.
good. Just want to make sure it didn't disappear like Milton did last time. So again, this is going to be US 180 Corridor Master Plan. Just a quick overview on this one. So with the US 180 corridor, it was roughly about 17.5 miles, and it was starting about Route 66 and Humphreys Street intersection, going about 10 miles past Snowball Road to accommodate kind of the snowplay traffic. And ADOT did determine that it was appropriate to study both Milton and the US 180 corridor together, because the impacts in Milton Road have a direct relationship to the upstream traffic impacts on US 180. So just for folks who didn't know that before. Again, the same, this also started in fall of 2017. as a result of the public meetings, public survey, or the collaboration between project partners, the recommended alternative for US 180 was the no-bill plus. And then I won't go through this. This is the same type of these study objectives, again, come directly from the charter that was created when the CMPs were started. I won't spend too much time on this one because I already talked about this in the Milton presentation. So what you see on this particular screen here is this is the no-bill plus, and this consists of a listing of specific spot improvements designed to enhance safety and operations along the intersections along the US 180 corridor. Again, I won't go through every single spot improvement. Again, you want more information on that, it's already included on the ADOT project website. And I know we've a lot of our project partners have already talked in kind of, in depth about a lot of these spot improvements. Okay, so what you see on this slide here, and I'll swim through all the slides here, it was recognized by the project partners that with the preliminary system alternatives that we did, because we went through a 3-tier analysis from tier 1, they were selected for a tier 2 analysis, generally capturing the range functionality of preferred and desired facilities. And again, I know it's hard to see on this screen, but this is kind of what is as was detailing up top. So with the preliminary system on alternatives from tier 1, and they were preliminary in nature, they were designed to initially gauge public support and not on kind of broader concepts, and then primarily developed from previous studies. It did include detailed specifications such as individual facility widths. So it kind of started there from tier 1, kind of saw what the public liked or what the project partner likes in tier 2, and then the final cut for tier 3, just kind of put it in a nutshell. So, and that's kind of what we see here, kind of like the evolution of that. And like I said, if you want to get more in depth on this, we can, like I said, the actual analysis on each of these tiers and each of tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 projects are available on the ADOT website. But I'll just fast forward through the movie on this one to kind of get to the highlight reel at the end. So I'll just skip right here. And then also what was considered too and analyzed was also looking at the Wing Mountain Road route and also Hidden Hollow Road route too, as part of this analysis. So once that was done, we looked at the corridor travel times along US 180. And with these travel times, what it tells us that without improving traffic operations to Milton Road, there are not much capital improvements we can do on US 180 or even bypassing US 180. And that would actually yield noticeable travel time benefits. But based on the negative the negative response to minimal traffic operations benefits, ADOT and the project partners recommended to the public that a new alternative, the no build plus spot improvements alternative, be recommended on US 180. So what the no build plus spot improvements alternative would do would add multimodal safety transit improvements without adding additional lanes. So again, you see on the table some of these travel times from this particular analysis. So as far as the public results, the no bill plus alternative was the only alternative on US 180 that the public supported more than they opposed. And so there was just very strong public support for that particular alternative. So go on to the next slide. So again, due to negligible traffic operation impacts of all the build alternatives, public rejection of building impacts, and also public and project partner support of the no bill plus, ADOT in the US 180 corridor master plan project partners voted to select the no bill plus as a recommended alternative for US 180. And then again, this is just a highlight of the slide I showed earlier with all those spot improvements identified. Again, the cost, the line items, the cost estimates for each of these spot improvements is included in the ADOT project website for US 180. So as far as implementing all those spot improvements, it would cost about a little under 3 million. Again, adjusting for construction cost index, there would probably be more like 3.5 if I were estimating there. Again, this is for ADOT to construct improvements that meet ADOT standards as funding becomes available, and for partners to fund improvements that exceed, if they wanted to exceed ADOT standards as funding becomes available. So that's it there. Again, I swam through that very, very fast. I mean, obviously there's a lot more to that, as Ann and Dave can attest to. So, but that's just a very, very quick overview. Again, the same next steps on this, as I mentioned with Milton, looking at the spot improvements that are identified, seeing what are the bigger priorities in the short term for ADOT, for the city, for the county, for Mountain Line, and coming to consensus on that, and hopefully getting 1 or 2 or more of those spot improvements implemented and built here in the next 3 to 5 years. That is the goal. That is the goal I have with Milton and US 180. So with that, I will stop and take any questions or comments. All right, I am hearing none, and I did it with 4 minutes to go, so I'm very happy about that. So awesome, and that leaves you, Miles, unless there's any comments or questions from it, Miles, that leaves you enough time for item D, Executive Board Agenda Review. The floor is yours.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I can go through D, E, and F really quickly. There's nothing on the executive board agenda that we didn't already discuss, except a sub-recipient grant agreement with the city of Flagstaff. It's going to city council October 18th, I think, and our board is going to look at it next month. So I don't think there's any surprises there. It's just to be able to pass through funding, and it's an administrative piece. Items from staff. We already talked about the SS4A grant, and I want to let you know that there's a local transport, I can't remember what LTAP is for, training assistance program, and there could be some trainings available. Metro Plan kicks in $1,500 or $2,000 a year, and then all the member agencies can apply to use some of that funding. We can talk more about it at a future meeting since we're almost out of time. You can read for yourself, and I've probably already spoken about these items in the future agenda. And with that, Mr. Chairman, in case there might be somebody else who has something to share, I'd like to just end and turn it back to you.
Awesome, thank you, Miles. And Dave, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, very quickly, prior to the meeting, I emailed the policies that we were looking at for onward and upward and stride forward, and we'll be happy to meet with any of you to talk through them. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Dave, appreciate it. And go ahead.
This is actually kind of related back to the work plan that was under the executive board update, I think. Just wondering if TAC could get an update on work plan items number 7, which is the West Route 66 plan, number 9, which is the tribal transit kind of coordination or opportunities, and then number 12, which was the ADOT route transfer study that is in the work plan. So just wondering, at some point when it makes sense for a TAC update on those, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you for the reminder.
Excellent, thank you, Ann. Does anyone else, opening the floor to anybody on the TAC, does anyone else have any questions, any comments, any reports to give? The floor is open. Going once, going twice, and sold. All right, so thank you again, everyone, for your time. Really, truly appreciate it. Everyone have a great rest of your day. Our next scheduled TAC meeting is October the 26th from 1:30 p.m. And with that said, I will adjourn the meeting. And I keep forgetting with open meeting laws, Miles. Do I have to look for a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting?
I don't believe you do. Rosie, you all right with that?
Yes, you do not need a motion to end the meeting. Thank you.
Fantastic. I adjourn the meeting. Everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.